Welcome to Tom Rhodes Smart Camp, and welcome Orion Levine
Thanks for having me, Tom.
to the Rhodes Library.
Hell yeah, I like it.
Do you feel comfortable being around this much knowledge?
Yes. It makes me think of Shang Wang's joke, one of my favorite comics. He goes, every time he walks into a bookstore, he goes, "Oh, look at all this knowledge I'm never gonna know." Or like, so that's how I feel here.
I love Shang Wang.
Yeah, he's the best.
He's hilarious. His special that he made was fantastic.
Yeah, it was so good.
So you and I met at the San Francisco Comedy Competition.
That's right.
I may have met you once before. I don't know.
But that was
That's where we bonded, man.
Yes, our friendship's big break.
So I was hosting the finals, semifinals, whatever it was, and you were one of the top 5
of that night. Yeah.
Yeah.
That might still be to this day one of the better shows I've ever done.
At the Luther Burbank Center.
Yeah, that room
in Santa Rosa.
Crazy good.
I had always wanted to play there, and I've driven past there 1,000 times.
Was that your first time?
That was my first time ever playing there.
So they didn't do that when you were doing the competition?
I never got that far.
Oh, really?
I never got to the...
Well, I guess for that year was the semifinals. I would imagine that in previous years it was in the finals.
Yeah.
I see.
And 6th was as best as I ever did in the San Francisco Comedy Competition.
Cool.
So yeah, I never made it to the finals, and that was where the finals were.
Wow, yeah.
So I had always wanted to play there. It was fantastic. It was brilliant. You and Chris Riggins, who ended up winning.
Yeah.
And,
well, he did it the year after mine. So.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you also host for him there?
Yes.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay. I don't remember which year it was. Whether did you do Livermore? Did that show in Livermore?
Yeah, at the Bankhead or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a comedian that was on the show, and I'm about to bring him on. He's on next, and I could tell he was like really flipping out, like really nervous. And so, trying to be the older, experienced comedian, I just wanted to help him, and I just leaned over to him. We were backstage, on the side of the curtain. And I just said, breathe in confidence, exhale fear.
Oh, I like that.
Breathe in confidence, exhale fear.
That's awesome.
Because I've done the competition, and I know
you might have said that to me. Even that sounds familiar.
I don't know, but it wasn't you. Good. The comedian went on, and he had a really horrible set.
Oh, really?
and when he came off, he goes, "I think I reversed it."
That's awesome. I love that. You'll have to tell me who that is later.
And then we've worked together at Cheaper Than Therapy, or you're a product of the San Francisco comedy scene.
Right. Yeah. I got some good Mark Maron stories in that green room at Cheaper Than Therapy.
Tell me.
Well, you told me.
I told you.
You told me your Mark Maron stories.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I always like that. I like the San Francisco history that I get from you. It's great.
Good.
As a new age San Francisco comic.
Well, I still feel connected to the San Francisco scene. I still go up there and play, once or twice a year.
Yeah, well, you would pop into the Sunday Showcase, and it would always be incredible to watch as somebody who was just starting out in San Francisco, and then seeing an OG come through.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I still, because that's where I got good as a comedian.
Yeah.
Because I started out in Florida and on the Southern circuits, and then when I moved to San Francisco, it was like diverse, international, intelligent audiences, and you could do smarter material. And, my whole life, I'm the man I am today because of San Francisco.
It's awesome. And I really, I like your style of comedy where it's very much like, you're just like your stage presence is so like boisterous, and like, I just love just like your jokes are so structured, and like you stick to the jokes, and I kind of do the same kind of thing. And so I love to see that done well and correctly.
Thanks, buddy. Well, I'd have to say you're one of my favorite hot young comedians.
Thanks,
I love your jokes.
Thanks.
You love your brain.
Thank
I love
you,
your delivery. Love your stage presence. You're mildly attractive, not bad to look at. And so, what's your joke writing style? How do you work?
I I'm definitely like a jokey guy. Like I like to do crowd work and riffing too, but like I kind of I prefer I'm find that I'm enjoying like the shorter sets because I could just like stick to the jokes and just like get in, get out. Whereas when I'm doing like, because now that I'm doing a little bit more headlining, I'm doing like, you know, like more like 45-minute sets, and there's I mean I have to go away from like the jokes and like go into the crowd and stuff, but that's not really like the joy for me. Is like I really just like the setup punchline stuff, and I try and do literally like every other line a punchline. Like that's like
that's your structured template.
I try to, for sure. I mean,
so will you write an idea and then try and insert something that way?
Yeah. So I think I'll start just with one line and try and build it from there. Or like I'll kind of go up with like a story and find the joke and then cut everything else and build it from there. But I used to write, and this is advice I give to newer comics anytime that they ask like how to write jokes or whatever. But I used to write in more like stanza form. So just like one line for a setup and then another line and find a punchline. And then I would underline all the lines, all the words that got laughs or like where the laugh would come. And so I would know it was a tight joke when it was every other line had an underline. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that's a different way of what I was thinking when I asked you the question, because Christopher Titus, you know, he kind of specializes in one-man show form. And I was talking with him a few years ago about this, and he said he'll write out a story of something that happened to him, and then he'll go back through, and every other line he'll try and insert a punchline.
Yeah. So
he's not writing in stanza form; he's writing in like long story form, and then just.
I kind of go the other way. I start with just one line, and I'll have just a quick joke, and then I'll like build it from there. And then one thing I realized is because yesterday we did a taping. OnlyFans is starting to do like comedy tapings, and because they're like a sexually charged company, like because they started out with a lot of people, you know, they would just go and post their nudes there, and people would pay.
Yeah, that's what my first thought was. Was it a naked show? Or
no. So they're trying to go away from that.
After the show, there's an orgy.
Yeah, exactly. There were a lot of jokes like that, but they're very much trying to like rebrand and like do a different direction. But because there's all this
started all the skank whores that took over their platform,
exactly, and made them millions and millions and millions of dollars. But so because of the history, their only hard rule was no jokes about kids. You can't mention kids. And I had a joke that I was planning on doing that, and the punchline, or it ended in a segment about. The whole joke is about how, like, if you can throw a foot, like, because I can't throw a football, I'm, like, obviously a liberal person, like, kind of just equating, like, your skill with the football and, like, your political stance. But the second half of the joke is a true story about how I was playing catch with a football at the beach, and I hit a baby that was in a carriage. Like, the football landed inside of the carriage. But because I couldn't talk about kids, I had to cut that part. But the joke started somewhere else, and that was something I added on. So because of that, I was able to essentially circumcise that joke and just keep the first part, and it was still fine. It still worked on its own.
Did you really throw a ball at a beach and accidentally hit a kid?
I did. I literally, I tried to do an exaggerated throw to make my friends laugh, and the ball went like 90 degrees the wrong direction. And there was a family gathering, and for whatever reason, the baby was in a carriage facing away from the family, maybe for sound, and the football like perfectly bullseye landed there, ran up in horror. The baby was holding the football, sleeping, just totally fine. It was crazy.
So it didn't hurt the child.
Did not hurt the child.
That's good. I was at the beach 2 summers ago here in LA, and afterwards I thought I was far enough away from the people to like shake the sand out of my blanket.
Yeah.
And I stood on and I thought I was a good distance.
Yeah.
But I shook this blanket and it was almost like a cartoon cloud of sand that came off this blanket, and it hit this entire family of 6 right in the, it hit them all in the face. I mean, and I thought they were like there's no way this is gonna hit. And it was cartoonish the way it smacked them all in the face. And then the father goes, "My son is like you." I go, "Your son's a moron?"
That's a perfect insult. I love that.
My son is like you.
I love that. Yeah. It's such a great way of saying you're behaving like a 10-year-old. It's awesome. I love that.
So you're telling me, you grew up in Berkeley. You moved there when you were 10, but you lived all over the world because of your father's work. So
yes.
Bangkok, Cairo. Where else did you live?
So I was 3. We moved to Bangkok, Thailand. 6 moved to Cairo, Egypt, and then
Could you handle the spicy food at 3?
I was a very picky eater, so I don't think I really delved into that. And then 9 years old, Nairobi, Kenya.
Wow.
And then when I turned 12, we moved back to the States. We moved to Berkeley, California.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cool. You lived in Kenya.
It was awesome. And we lived in Cairo before they had their revolution, and it was awesome. That was probably my favorite place as a kid. I was able to kind of walk around the neighborhood, and
when Mubarak ran everything.
Yeah, and so
it was just funny. Mubarak means happy. Eid is the Christmas of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
So people say Eid Mubarak, happy Eid.
Mm-hmm.
And then that guy's name was Mubarak, who was this really iron-fisted dictator forever. And he didn't look happy at all.
No.
So it's funny that the guy's name was
no, totally.
It was Mubarak.
Yeah, the irony. I mean, that's good branding.
I guess I'm the only one who finds that relatively amusing.
Yeah, it's smart branding. It's hard to hate a guy named Happy. But that was my childhood, and still relatively sheltered, but also I got to see the world before I became a teenager. And and for the most part, I'm still a regular American, but there's references that I don't get that a lot of people picked up on in their early childhood years. And the biggest one is wrestling, WWE, just because it didn't make it to our cable system there. We had an armed forces cable network. And they didn't play any wrestling. So everybody my age has this extensive knowledge of WWE wrestlers that I just don't have.
You don't know who they are.
Yeah. So I missed out on that.
Okay.
Which I think I'm okay with.
Yeah, I think you did okay.
Yeah.
Times I had done military gigs, and you're staying in a hotel on the military base, and it's the Armed Forces Television Network.
Yeah.
The commercials, they're not regular commercials. They're kind of messages to the soldiers, the commercials.
Yeah, wear your seatbelt and stuff.
Wear your seatbelt. Don't shake your baby.
Oh, wow.
Was
that's crazy.
One I saw a bunch when I was in Japan.
Yeah, wow, that's
doing
wild.
this Marine base. I guess a lot of Marines are.
Oh, God.
You're the reason I had to join the freaking Marines.
Oh,
I don't know what. But, and then don't let your wife or partner ring up huge debt on credit cards.
Wow.
Yeah, things like that.
Yeah, just the problems that they
just
run into.
Kind of basic life advice.
Yeah, which I'd much prefer that than a Wendy's commercial.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If it was all tips for living and not being stupid.
Yeah.
Or so you don't, hurt your child or fuck your credit.
Yeah, totally. And the TV that was on, 2 shows I remember them playing a lot was Blind Date and Room Raiders. Do you remember those by any chance? This stupid, just trash television, basically. But yeah, and then the weird Armed Forces commercials. The main one I remember was just wear your seatbelt, but I'm sure there was all sorts of weird shit like that.
Yeah. So you went to puberty and learned how to drive in Berkeley, California.
That's right. Yeah.
So are you a hippie at heart? Did you go to Malcolm X Elementary School?
I didn't. So I moved back in middle school, and I went to Martin Luther King Middle School. My nickname was Africa, which was fun. That's kind of a morale booster, I think.
Because you came from Africa.
Yeah, and you got a bunch of like cool black kids calling you Africa.
That's a really great nickname.
Yeah, it was awesome. I'll take it. I wish I was still called Africa.
I'm going to call you Africa.
Yeah, so
I love it.
my joke that I wrote, because I wanted to be, I always thought I was really fast, and I joined the track and field team when I lived in Kenya, and those dreams were squashed pretty quickly.
I think I've heard you do that.
Yes, yeah.
I may have done this in front of you. Forgive me for running bits on you, but I dated a woman from Kenya.
Okay.
Once. Did I ever tell you this?
I don't think so.
And I got 2 really great jokes out of it.
Oh, I bet, yeah.
And she was a really super phenomenal human being.
Yeah.
And she's really short.
Oh, interesting.
It's funny, you think of African people being like tall or something.
I would have guessed, yeah, tall.
She was short, she was beautiful, super intelligent. She was a doctor.
Okay.
But in research medicine, she wanted to cure AIDS for Africa. So she really came at the medical industry from like this really pure, beautiful place, like super intelligent, compassionate genius. But the jokes that I did, it was really interesting dating a woman from Kenya, because when we would go on a date, she would insist on running alongside the car.
Oh my God.
And
that's a classic Tom Rhodes joke.
But this one's even better. So I really did date a woman from Kenya. And I don't know if you know this, now a lot of Kenyan names have an N in front of it.
Okay, yeah.
This woman's name was Njeri.
Okay.
Njeri. Njeri.
I love it. I already see where
Tom
this is going.
Njeri.
That's awesome, yeah.
Joke wasn't strong enough to keep the relationship alive.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. That's great.
But I had a woman from Sierra Leone in the audience at the Improv on Saturday night. And I whipped out that joke, and it still kills. Yeah.
Wait, did you do it because you knew there was...
Well, because I'll ask if there's someone from another country, because I normally have a story or a joke.
Yeah, you do.
And I didn't have a Sierra Leone joke, so I said, I don't have a Sierra Leone.
We'll round up to Kenya.
I go, would you accept a joke for your continent? Because I don't have one for... Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, that's so cool that you've done enough traveling and like writing, and that you can do that, you know? That's awesome. Like, that is, it's like, it's so Tom to just like... be like, where are you from? Okay, here's a joke about that area.
It's always cool. It's a good party trick.
What's the when you ask that question, and what's the answer that you receive where you're like, yes, here we go, home run? Like,
I'll get excited. Germany, my German stuff's pretty tight.
Yeah.
England, my stuff is pretty tight.
Yeah.
Paris, France, Holland,
cool.
Peru, places that I know I've got really great jokes on. There's a Australia, there's a bunch of them, you know?
And then do you get excited about Arizona, or do you not? Is it always another country? Because I know you have like an Arizona.
I have a little Arizona joke, but it's always, is there someone from another country?
I see, okay.
You know?
Okay, cool.
But I'll get stumped with a Lithuania or Kazakhstan.
I'm Lithuanian.
Are you Lithuanian?
Yeah, some part of me. Not sure how much.
Okay, well then, if we're on the same show and there's someone from Lithuania, I'll go, hold on. Ryan, get in here.
Tons of Lithuania stuff.
I know you didn't grow up watching wrestling, but tag me and you get in there.
That's awesome. Perfect. I love it. Oh, that's great.
So what were your Berkeley experiences? I mean, I guess you could have ended up an academic or a drug addict. I mean,
it's so funny. I went to Berkeley High, and they used the phrase Yale or jail to describe it, because like kids either do really well there or like you just fuck off. And I definitely went the fuck off route. It was so easy to skip class there.
Yale or jail?
Yeah, there was like almost 4,000 students at the time. I don't know where they're at now, but like, that just a ton of kids, and you could just walk out the front gates. At one semester, I had racked up like almost 70 absences in one class. So I did a ton of skipping school. And
what did you do when you skipped school?
Smoked weed, skateboarded, smoked weed. Yeah.
Well, did they have Blondie's Pizza there?
Oh yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
Because the one in San Francisco, they've moved, and it was, oh my God, the pizza was so good. And then I've been back to the new location several times. I've given them 2 chances. It ain't like it used to.
Yeah.
But and I remember in Berkeley they had one too.
Yeah, they still did at the time that I went to school there. Now it's called like Abe's or something. Same location and like similar sign, but different.
And then Amoeba Records.
Yep. How many of these records do you think?
It started, a good... A lot of these records have come from Amoeba Records.
Yeah.
Because they started in Berkeley. And so when I lived in San Francisco, I would take the BART over to Berkeley just to go to Amoeba. I thought it was the coolest record store in the world.
And then they opened one
in San Francisco.
Yeah.
And then now there's one in LA.
And was Milk Bar across from that Amoeba when you were there? So there's a bar there now called Milk
that's like
Bar.
an ice cream place, right?
It is. Here it is. But Milk Bar it's just a bar on Haight Street, right across from Amoeba. And that's like kind of where I found my footing in like the open mic scene in San Francisco. They did
on Haight Street?
Yeah, right across from Amoeba. They did a ton of open mics there.
Wow.
They still do. And yeah, so that was like my first San Francisco open mic was there. And then I did just a bunch of comedy there up until I left.
But I remember I used to do a joke about Berkeley. Because I love Berkeley. I always thought it was cute. They call it the Republic of Berkeley, or that it's like this little communist enclave. People will say jokingly.
Sure.
I know in Berkeley I saw postcards. It was like communist countries of the world.
Yeah.
And they show Berkeley.
Yeah.
It's just, it's cute.
Yeah.
The way they're being silly.
Have you been to the Anarchist bookstore in Berkeley?
No.
Yeah, you got to check that out. It's still there. It's like in this weird little like alleyway, and they have just all books like communist books and it's like the Anarchist bookstore.
There's an Anarchist bookstore in Amsterdam.
Okay, cool.
That I've been to a bunch. I didn't know there was one in.
Yeah, it's one of those stores that you're like, how does this place pay the rent?
Yeah.
I can't imagine like too many people are buying those books, but it's cool. I always stop in when I'm in that area. Cool.
But I just find Berkeley such a fascinating place, and it was something I did a couple of times on stage. Like when I was living in San Francisco, I'm in Berkeley. And what's the main street? Is it Telegraph?
Telegraph, yeah.
Yeah. So
it's there like Haight Street.
There was a group of young black men with hoodies, and they're all huddled around each other, and I'm thinking, wow, what could be happening? Mm-hmm. And then as I got closer, they were all standing over a chess game.
Oh, nice.
There was two of them were playing chess, and the other ones were just like standing over it, like locked in. And so there was no crime happening.
Yeah.
The most dangerous thing that happened was someone's rook was taken.
I love that.
And I thought, that's so Berkeley.
Yeah, there's nothing cooler than like a guy playing chess on the street, It's like, it's just so, I feel like that's a big like New York thing more so than there, but I'd love to be good enough at chess to like hold
Me too. I always think it's cool when you see that and like there's a crowd of people watching.
Yeah, of course.
I find that really fascinating.
Yeah, and you're like, what's going on? Yeah, that's awesome.
The people are that into chess.
Yeah, my brain is not good enough for those types of games. I struggle in the chess, but yeah, that's awesome.
What games are you good at?
I was always a skateboarder, and I kind of put all my eggs into the skateboarding basket, and then I turned out to not be that athletic, so that was a bad bet.
Were you planning on being like the next Tony Hawk?
I wanted to be a pro skater for sure, but I'm not, it's a hard reckoning. I think anybody who's not athletic, everybody wants to be, I think, as a kid, or you don't. But like, if you do, you want to be a professional, whatever. And all my friends were just more flexible and just more like aerodynamic, I guess. And they could just do so much more than me. And I could never really catch up. But I was a pretty good skater. And then I just had to kind of like come to terms with the fact that it wasn't going to happen for me. I do have friends who like...
What age did that hit you? Because I wanted to... when I was like 14, 15, I dreamed of being a Major League Baseball player.
Oh, yeah. No, me too.
And then when I got to high school, that curveball was... I knew instantly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be in the pros.
I think about around 24, 25 is when I like stopped going quite as hard. And that's around the time like my friends started getting like sponsorships and like appearing
what
in
about
like
me?
Yeah, exactly. So, but I mean, I found comedy, and that like I've always been. My brain has worked good enough for comedy, so yeah, it works out. It works out.
And, you don't need to kick flip anything.
Yeah, it's funny. I think and do you agree that like every comic wants to be a musician and vice versa? Like, yeah.
No, I've always wanted to be a comedian and nothing else.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to split my money with bandmates.
Yeah, that seems brutal.
And some unreliable drummer.
For sure.
Shit like that.
Yeah. And they can't, I mean, some of these gigs, you can't be making much more than we make at those types of gigs, So,
yeah.
But I went to a music festival recently. Somebody had invited me. I was doing a show in San Diego, and somebody was like, hey, I'm doing a set at this thing. You should come by. And they had a really cool installation where there was just instruments like bolted into the structure, and you could play. And I got on the bass, and there was a guy on the drums and a guy on the guitar, and I was playing just a really simple bass line. And I thought that I was like crushing it. And then somebody asked to like play, and then they went on and like really started jamming. And I was like, oh, damn, I'll never be there. But yeah, I would like to be a musician. That's how I started playing guitar. And that was like my first like dip into like the entertainment industry. And I was like, I wanted to do that. Are you
a pretty good guitar player?
I'm self-taught, and I don't have any kind of music IQ, so no. But like, I felt pretty good, and I can play. I can fuck around, and it sounds okay. But yeah, as soon as I found comedy, it was like to my bandmate, I was like, "Sorry, dude, this is me." So I'm grateful I found it. And I started at 24. You said you started at 17?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. I wish I'd found it then. But like, I got in at 24, which I feel like is like the last like year of like, okay, I started young enough to like pursue it and find it. And so worked my ass off for the past 6 years or whatever.
What have been your greatest achievements as a comedian so far?
When I met you, that was my greatest achievement at the time. Meeting Tom Rhodes. But just that competition in general, making it to the finals, that was finally like I could have, what do you want me to say when I bring you up?
Nice credit.
Finally had something. Yeah. And then I think getting New Faces in 2022 was...
At Montreal.
Yeah, that was just like, it felt kind of like, divine, just like the way that it happened. I did a small comedy festival in San Diego, and the booker had been invited there, and for whatever reason she showed up, and she liked my set, and like a few months later, got a call from her. So that might still be it. And then I did a late night, I did the Late Late Show, James Corden, that was also up there. But yeah, I think just getting New Faces was like that bump that I needed, so that was pretty magical.
Nice.
Yeah. What about you, looking back? Like,
the Late Night Talk Show in Amsterdam.
Yeah.
Doing the Edinburgh Festival was a big one because I was always afraid of it.
Yeah.
And then the year I got sober, I thought, hey, this would be a great year to do Edinburgh.
Nice.
Because it's a long month, and I had visited it a few times and seen just how wrecked comedians get, and then like
just tired from
especially if like you get a bad review, which fortunately I didn't get any, but I had seen friends who just weren't selling tickets or got a bad review, and they're just like hurting themselves.
When you is it kind of aside from like if you go and like you have a ton of fans or whatever, like is it really dependent on the review? Like if you get a review, then you're good.
It used to help. I mean, now I don't know, things have changed with social media,
Sure.
So, and even when I did it in 2014, things were changing, that the big newspapers of Britain, had stopped sending reviewers. So there was a lot of comedy bloggers. That was kind of the thing, because it was, if you got written up in the Scotsman or one of these, the Guardian, one of these prestigious UK papers, boom, you'd be set.
Right. For the rest of the month.
And then, like that year that I went, it was a lot of papers had cut back the money and didn't send reviewers, and then there was a lot of bloggers or people with websites. And then I thought, hey, I have a website and I have a podcast. So, and I was recording my podcast while I was there. So comedian friends of mine that I had on, then I would write a little review for them on my website and give them all 5 stars.
Oh, nice.
And so some of them, when you get a 5-star review, you put it on your poster.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And so these people were like, Tom Rhodes, awesome. Smart Camp, 5 stars.
Perfect. I love that. Yeah, that's something. That's awesome. I'll have to start leaving some reviews.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
If you got a website, you got the power.
Yeah.
But I think playing around the world, that being able to go to all these different countries and then do so well that like I got invited back many times.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think that's probably my greatest achievement.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You know?
Yeah, you're kind of like it. I was saying this before, but like you really found like your like how to be your most authentic self and like your comedy and like your trajectory, and like you become like this like international traveling comic, and I think that's genuinely who you are as a person, you know. And I mean, like even your fucking little magnet section over there, it's like so many different countries and places, so it's cool that you've like blended those two things.
Yeah.
And I think that every comic, especially now where it's like we're all fighting for like the attention on social media and stuff, like you really need to find like that niche and like how to define yourself, you know. It's not enough just to be like, I'm writing jokes. Like you need to be like, oh no, I'm this type of comedian, you know. It's very cool. It's awesome.
Well, I started going to London, and London was the key to the international circuits for me. Like when I first started going over there, like 1998, 1999.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think 99, I started really playing in London a couple of times a year. And then I moved to Amsterdam in 2000. I think the timing of it was kind of perfect for when there was a lot of gigs around the world that were opening up and comedy festivals. And it was really good timing. Cause like I know like a lot of Asian gigs and Scandinavia, a lot of rooms went out of business during the pandemic. So I think a lot of and there was great gigs around China, and the Chinese government shut all these English language gigs down about 5-6 years ago before the pandemic. Really? But like I played in Beijing 4 times.
Whoa.
I played in Shanghai, like I think maybe 6-7 times.
Yeah.
And it was awesome going to Beijing.
And they fly you out and stuff, or
that's from London.
Wow.
It was it was this Hong Kong tour first. It was booked by John Moorhead, this Australian guy, and he was mostly British acts because it was all these English people over there. But then his gigs kind of diminished, and then some Americans started some other gigs in Beijing and Shanghai and Hong Kong that I did later. So
nice.
I got to travel all over China and do stand up,
incredible.
Which is pretty great. And
is Top Secret Comedy Club in London, is that as good as I've heard?
I've done it. It's okay. I mean, the stage is really tiny.
Are you you're like closed in a way?
It's kind of, it's a really small, boxy stage.
Oh, because you're a pacer.
I'm a pacer. I like a little, I'm a caged panther.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen you on a stage where you can't really do that.
Yeah.
That's so funny.
But I like the Comedy Store in London is great. And then if you do your own hour show, the Soho Theater.
Okay, cool.
Is great, which isn't far from Top Secret.
That's awesome. So when you're on a small stage like that, do you feel like your performance changes, like when you can't pace like that?
A little. And then the other thing, like if I'm on a big theater stage, then it's almost like a little too much stage to move around.
Yeah, and it's like distracting or what?
Well, I just like, not really distracting, but it's just like a different thing I need to keep in mind.
Yeah.
You know?
So like, where did you pick that up? I know Chris Rock is like a huge pacer in that way.
Yeah.
Like, do you think you picked that up from him or like?
Maybe. I think Bring the Pain maybe.
Yeah.
But actually, some of the greatest advice I ever got when I started, tell them the joke, show them the joke. Which a joke is 1,000 times funnier if you act it out a little bit, even if it's just with your face. Tell them the joke, show them the joke. And then this old hippie comedian from Chicago, Jimmy Wiggins, he told me, when you're on stage, you shouldn't just stand in one spot. You should shit in all four corners.
I like that.
So when I'm on stage, I'll try and and I don't do it consciously, but I'll try and have my feet touch every part of the stage.
Wow.
I like moving around.
Interesting.
I like acting things out.
Yeah.
I like, so I'll try and,
oh, that's so
if
cool.
it's like a normal stage size, my feet will normally touch every part of it.
Who told you the first piece of advice?
It might have been Brian Regan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because I started out with Brian in Florida.
Yeah, he's a
Doing
big facial expression guy.
Doing horrible one-nighters in Florida. And he would headline and I would be like the feature act.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
I think I've known Brian longer than most anyone.
Whoa, that's awesome. Yeah, I just saw his headshot at the Ice House yesterday. And it looked like the mullet situation kind of thing. Like, I don't know what maybe Jerry curl. I don't know what you call that style, but it was so funny to see. I love that.
So, what about Berkeley, California defines who you are?
It is such like a politically engaged city. And I remember like there was like Iraq war protests that I went to as a kid that were really like kind of defining for me at the time. And just like, I think, you kind of, that was like my first, like interaction with like, it was like this crazy like conflict situation where, excuse me, sorry,
you got to wake up.
That's for my parking thing.
Hey, that's smart.
Okay.
So your parking is.
I'm probably good for another like 30 minutes or so.
Okay, good.
But yeah, just like getting in, just like this like political conflict situation and like seeing like, oh, we don't all think the same in this country, and and I think just there's a certain like freedom in Berkeley, and there's still, from like just like the 60s, and like that perspective has kind of bled into like the psyche of just like the city, and you can really feel it, especially with some of these like shops like the anarchist bookstore that we're talking about. Like you feel that history, and it's cool to be a part of that. Not that I'm like the most like politically engaged person or but just having grown up and like knowing that and being around that history, I think has been huge. And but yeah, and smoking weed, I learned how to smoke weed very well in Berkeley, became an expert. But yeah, I think just kind of like there is a certain freedom there that I think.
Does weed help you write jokes?
I used to really believe that it did, and I think that was me justifying like my addiction to it.
I did too, and that's why I asked you that question.
Yeah,
because for the longest time I thought, oh, it's like my spinach. I'm Popeye.
Exactly.
It helps
me.
And then now in recent years, I think it does the opposite.
Yes, it does, and I think if you use it correctly, it is a very valuable tool, but it is so easy to abuse it. And I think I had my routine used to be wake up, breakfast, coffee, smoke some weed, sit down and write. And I got so used to that routine that I thought I'd convinced myself I couldn't write without weed. And then once I wrote a good joke without weed, outside of that routine, it was so like liberating in that way, because I was like, okay, I do not need this anymore. And then I discovered that when I was smoking weed during the day, it would affect my performances at night. So now and this is hard to stick to, but I smoke weed after the show. And then that helps too, because, when you get off stage, you have that adrenaline, and then you're thinking about the show and the jokes, maybe listen to the recording, and then you can write that. And then if I smoke weed then it's like, now my creative juices are really flowing, and then I can write. a second writing session at night, sometimes like with weed, and it'll help in that way. But like, yeah, definitely.
I like this.
Yeah, and
format.
That whole George Carlin famous advice is write sober, punch up stoned, or whatever.
Yeah, that's funny. I was just talking about that yesterday.
Yeah.
'Cause I saw him interviewed at the first HBO Comedy Festival in Aspen in 1995.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they asked him if he ever used drugs or weed to write material. And he said he always writes his material sober.
Yeah.
But then he'll go back, smoke a joint, and it's punch up time.
Totally. And I've noticed it too with guitar, because I like to play guitar just as a hobby, and like I'll hit a lot of walls in guitar. You kind of end up just playing the same thing, and then you smoke a little weed and you're like, oh my God, I'm just like unlocking things, you know? And then you go back and you can play them sober, and it's like, it's something that you like found, like, thanks to this thing. But yeah, it's tricky, man. It's like, I love weed so much, and a large part of my 20s has been figuring out where it's helpful and where it's hurtful, you know? So I'm trying. And what about, you said you were sober. Does that include weed?
California sober.
Yeah. So
but I did just quit. I quit smoking pot for 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And then at Burning Man, I started smoking a little
nice.
bit.
Yeah, you're a burner. I saw that on Instagram.
I'm a burner, man.
What was the Muddy Man experience for you?
It was great because I brought books. I just stayed in my little tent and read for 24 hours when all these people were panicking.
Yeah.
And it's interesting being around at a big gathering when there's lots of people panicking.
Yeah. Oh, so there was panic?
There was lots of people trying to leave and get out. And they were just, it reminded me of COVID.
Yeah, interesting.
Where they said, because it's like 8 miles to the nearest road. Mm-hmm. And they said, shelter in place, the front gate is locked. And then this like word went around. I just read something that they're lying, that the gate is open and it's safe to leave. And like, no, you know, there's like, they had a little radio station.
Wow.
And you get listening to them, they're saying, you know, if you get stuck, there's no no emergency vehicles will come get you.
Did it ruin the vibe?
It was like, it just kind of separated the chaff from the wheat, as they say. Because I was around all these like survivalist Canadians and Coloradans, and
so they can handle it.
It was great. Yeah,
that's awesome.
And I was enjoying it.
Yeah.
But there was people that were flipping out. And had to get out. Their Teslas would get stuck in the mud.
God.
It's fun seeing rich people suffer.
I'm sure, yeah. Well, I think, the Burning Man is that for a lot of people. It's like their 1 week where they go and like are separated from.
I'm roughing it, man.
Yeah, totally. That's funny.
Have you ever been to Burning Man?
No, my mom's been, and I think I'd like to go at some point.
What's your mom's burner name?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I'd have to ask her.
You don't know what your mom's burner name?
No, what's yours?
Radiant.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. I'll have to ask her. Does everyone have one?
Yeah. When you go, like, you get someone's supposed to give you a name.
I like that.
Yeah, these topless Canadian girls found my smile radiant.
Oh, perfect.
And the woman said that from the moment I first saw you, you've been radiant.
Oh, cool. Yeah, nice. That's
like
awesome. That's very cool.
Definitely an ego boost.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're doing the show. This will air after our show, but there's a storytelling element to this show. Like, I want you to do your brilliant stand-up. I love what you do. That's why I invited you. But like, what story could when we sit down in the chairs after your set, what would bust people's brains out?
Well, there's a story I've been telling, which is, I'm not a storytelling comic, but like I found a story recently.
For 5 minutes tomorrow night, you're going to be.
I'm excited, but I've been messing around with this story about, a lot of my comedy is about my parents. And there's a great quote that I think about all the time. Is like, nobody can push your buttons like your family because they put them
installed
there.
all the buttons. Yeah.
But I've, my mom and my dad are just so funny, like with their technology, of course. I mean, technology has just changed so much. It's impossible to keep up, and even for me, like, but my mom calls me when she needs Ubers, because she oftentimes can't figure out where the app is, or like.
So you're ordering or Ubers from your mom?
Yeah, and I always say my mom has reverse engineered the yellow cab system using her son in Uber, because if she needs Uber, she calls me and then I enter the address. But there was a story where she was out, probably like partying a little bit with her friends, and then she called me at that in like the wee hours of the night to get an Uber, and I pick it up, and then the Uber didn't make it home, so I could just see on the screen, it wasn't driving anymore, and then Uber picks up on that. They're like, something's up here. You're not. It's 10 minutes past when you were supposed to get dropped off. And then they check on you, and I can't get a hold of my mom, can't get a hold of the Uber driver. He's like this old, weird guy. And I ended up calling the police and sending them out there, be like, yo, I don't know what's going on with my mom. And then, long story short, she's just in the bar with the Uber driver. Like they had just become pals. Yeah, they stopped for a drink on the way home.
Oh, so the dot on the Uber app is just stuck in one spot?
Yes, exactly. Just in the parking lot. He never ended the ride. He was also like an older guy who I don't think knew what was going on, and they, for whatever reason, like hit it off. But
how old is your mom?
My mom is in her 60s. Okay. Yeah, and she's cool. She's awesome. She's definitely. You guys would probably get along well.
Yeah, sounds like we would.
Yeah, totally.
I won't date your mother. That'd be too awkward. So what's the end of that story? They just
the cop called me back and was like, "Hey, found your mom. She's hanging out with the Uber driver. They're getting along great. She seems to be fine." And then from my mom's perspective, it's awesome too, because she's just in a bar. All of a sudden, a couple cops walk in and be like, "Hey, we're looking for Kay." Like, and she's like, "I'm here. What's wrong?" Like, your son's worried about you. Why don't you give him a call? So yeah, there's that. I've got good traveling stories as well.
Let's hear them. Come on, lay them on me.
We went, because we lived in Kenya. So when in Kenya, you go on safari trips, and we had similar to your to the Burning Man situation. We got stuck in the mud and ended up like having to ask for the help of like all these like tribe people that were out there, and just help pushing the car out of the mud. And then we ended up having one of these dudes come with us in the car just to make sure that we made it to our area safely.
Yeah.
And so we were sharing a car. We got stuck again, and we ended up having to spend the night in our car. And I have a 5-person family, plus add one more person. So we're like 6 people deep in this car, stuck in the mud. There's like hyenas outside, and yeah, we're just like sharing our space with this like local dude, and ended up having to get like towed out in the morning. But so it worked out. I'm not sure if there's too many beats of that story, but at one point we have like these like puffy Cheetos just as a snack, and we of course offer it to him, and he like had never seen it before, and he starts trying to peel the Cheeto, like the dust off or something, and so just like a fun cultural moment. And yeah, that's definitely something that like our family still talks about to this day. I remember in the middle of the night, that night, my dad has an idea to like use like a plastic cover. You know how they have like the mud flaps in the bottom of the where you put your feet, and he like employs us to like put them under the wheels to try and get out, and it didn't work obviously, and now we're like calf deep in mud in the middle of like Kenyan wilderness. So yeah, stuff like that. Trying to think like another situation that we could have done. Experiencing 9/11 in Egypt was crazy.
Tell me about that.
Obviously, I was very young. I didn't understand what was happening. I thought George Bush was in the plane. That was my understanding of the event. So I like mourned the death of our president on 9/11. I think at some point my parents had to explain to me that that's not what was happening. But
how could he be giving a speech the next day?
Yeah, I know, right?
He died
like, oh, thank God. Yeah. But yeah, I need to talk more with my parents about that, because I mean it had to have been an interesting time to be like an American living in like a Muslim country, you know. But yeah,
Uh, like 1 week after September 11th, I was booked in Jakarta, Indonesia,
wow,
which is the highest Muslim populated country in the world.
yeah,
And so I was living in Amsterdam, and I remember I was at the Amsterdam Zoo when the planes hit. It was 3 p.m. in Amsterdam is feeding time at the Artis Zoo. So I was standing in front of the lions watching them rip raw meat apart with their teeth when the first plane hit. And then I was in front of the polar bears when the second plane hit.
Wow.
And a friend had called me and said, yeah, there's a strange thing. A plane just hit the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And I just thought, oh, it's a little plane. And then when I was in front of the polar bears, he called me back and said, no, a second plane just hit. It's a terrorist attack. You should get home in front of a television set.
Wow.
And then I remember, watching the friggin' towers fall live on television, which was really disturbing. Because before I lived in Amsterdam, I lived in the Wall Street area. I lived 3 blocks from the World Trade Center.
Wow.
And so I just remember just the beehive of human activity. And there was a mall underneath it. So just when 3,000 people died, I thought it was going to be way more than 3,000. I had lived right down there. So, and then a week later, I'm booked in Jakarta, Indonesia. And the 2 other comedians that I was supposed to work with canceled. 2 English guys were too afraid to go over. And the guy he still runs the gigs in Jakarta, Eamon Sadler. And he still to this day talks about, when I've gone over there and done the gig, he'll tell the story and he'll say, of the 3 acts that I had booked after September 11th, which one do you think would cancel?
Wow.
Because you think it would be.
And you were the only American.
I was the only American.
Wow.
And he said, and the American is the only one who came.
How do you address it?
It was really tense too, because in Jakarta, these extreme radical people were burning American flags. They knew that we were going to start bombing brown countries. So they were flipping out and saying, attack Americans in the street and attack American businesses.
Just to get ahead of it.
So I had to kind of stay in the hotel.
Wow.
And
did you ever tell people you're like Canadian or something? That was something that we did when people would ask.
Oh. No, never. Wow. But yeah, it was. I remember it was a really tense time in Jakarta.
I can only
imagine. Week later.
Do you remember what you said on stage?
They could only get. It was hard for the guy to find acts to open the show.
I'd imagine.
And there was an Australian guy who was a magician who was on a cruise ship. And he got him to come over. And he was just like Crocodile Dundee. And he would come out and say, I'm Kangaroo Jack. I throw my boomerang and it comes right back. And the guy, pretty horrible set.
Sure.
And I walked out and I said, wow, I've never seen a foreign audience so happy to see an American. And so it kind of started from there.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy.
But then I was hanging out with that guy after the show. And there was, no one else to hang out with. And we're drinking. And I keep going, Jack. God damn it. And another thing, Jack. And then after, an hour or 2, he tells me, he goes, mate, please call me Steve. My name is really Steve. And I say, oh, why aren't you Kangaroo Steve? And he goes, because Steve doesn't rhyme with me boomerang coming back. So the guy changed his name for a joke that wasn't funny.
That is so awesome. Oh my God. It's so easy. It would be so
But
easy
I've been back to
remedy that.
Jakarta a bunch of times. It's once you get to know it a little bit, it's great.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome.
I'm a big fan of Indonesia.
You could say, Captain Steve, when I throw my boomerang, it doesn't leave.
That would have been perfect.
Solve
See?
it right there.
See, had you been working with the guy, he'd still
pitch
have a
it.
career.
Oh, that's funny.
But how old were you when September 11th happened?
I had to been 8. Yeah,
Okay.
I was born in 93.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, crazy time.
So what other stories do we have that we could?
From
Select from.
abroad. Well, this is crazy. I just we had like a housekeeper that would be at our house sometimes, and she got pregnant, and I jokingly, this is in Kenya, Nairobi, and I had have been no older than 11, and I jokingly asked her to name her kid after me, and I at some point I had got word that she did. She said she would, and she ended up doing it. And less than a week ago, I get an email through my website from a man named Orion Tongo, and he reaches out and he says, my name's Orion. My mom used to work with your family, and she named me after you.
Wow.
And he goes, I'd like to meet you. And then I responded to him immediately. Like, yes, I'd love to. Please send me pictures. How's your mom? We loved your mom. She was incredible. Just an incredible woman. He used a skateboarder, which is
no way, really cool.
Yeah, and he had entered his email wrong into because I have on my website, I have like a form that you put your email in a message.
Yeah.
He fucking put his email wrong, so the email bounced back, and I have no idea how else to get hold of him. So he's
thinking you're an arrogant prick.
Yeah,
He's
exactly.
not writing, and why didn't this guy write me back?
Yeah, exactly.
I told him my mom named me.
I
after
know. I'm like, it's killing me inside to know that, but. That was an incredible moment just to sit there and just like get that email, But
wow.
So Orion Tongo, if you are listening, please.
If anyone in Kenya knows Orion Tongo,
I've been like changing the email slightly to try and find it. Like I'm like, okay, put Yahoo, maybe it's Gmail. I'm like putting a 1 after it. All the common things. So that's been eating me up. But. Yeah, I learned to skate in Kenya, so that was fun. I have like videos of me as a kid holding on the backs of like cars out there, and but yeah, it's weird because like other than that, it was like other than the location, like it's still pretty standard like American upbringing, But
do you have any stories of obstacles that you've overcome or? Where you were heroic?
Where I was heroic. Wow.
Or when you were a coward? What? I think either.
Wow. Heroic. I'd like to think that I'm heroic, although, yeah, I have a hard time.
Wouldn't we all?
Yes, I think we all would like to be. I definitely sometimes don't stick up for myself. I caught a guy stealing my bike one time, and to this day, like, I wish I would have really confronted him. I mean, if you've ever gotten your shit stolen, all you can think of is like, man, if only I just walked up in that moment.
Well, that's how Muhammad Ali became a boxer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, when he was a kid, someone stole his bike.
Oh, so
and he was pissed, and he wanted to find the kid that stole his bike and beat him up.
Wow. So he took that rage. And
there was a local cop in Louisville that gave free boxing classes in some gym.
Yeah, that's so cool.
That's why,
Yeah, so he was stealing my...
You could have been the next Muhammad Ali
totally.
If you'd had more anger.
He was actually stealing my tire. You know how people will take just the tire that you can remove. And I caught him doing it. I just put my hand on the bike, started unlocking it. And not even saying anything.
Circus performer.
Yeah, and he just goes, he was like, walked away. And then 10 minutes later, I see him with a tire, someone else's tire. And I'm just like, to this day, like, I wish I just would have laid it on him, But
I feel like you're like me. You try and avoid.
I do. I have a whole bit about that, about like not being confrontational. But I used to write graffiti. I was a big graffiti writer as a kid. Kind of like that was like my first like introduction into like creativity and like art was like graffiti, and not the best outlet for it. And my parents weren't too stoked on it, but those are the only fights that I've gotten into were graffiti related. And so when I was 17 years old, I got into an altercation with a 25-year-old about graffiti. So like
he was unhappy you were defacing something?
He was also a graffiti writer, but for whatever reason, we started like going over each other. Like that's the big big no-no in graffiti is like don't go over other people. Don't do graffiti over their graffiti, which is kind of a silly idea. But we had started doing that and call it beef. And I got his information one time in my like in the midst of my teenage angst, I just had a moment of like feeling angry, and I called up the guy, and we planned to fight, and then we met up at a park. And of course he's an adult. I'm a late blooming teenager, and got my ass kicked for the first time.
Oh wow, he fought you.
He fought me. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, which I think that's a big crime to beat up a minor as a 25-year-old.
Wow.
Yeah.
I thought he got there and realized you were just a youngster. And
no, I wish. He ended up, we ended up fighting. In the fight, he had pulled my shirt off, and then he started choking me. He started like strangling me. And I had all these like blood vessels burst in my forehead, and he just looked crazy, just all red and, like bruised up. And then I went straight to tutoring after that, just from my first fight, and walked into my tutoring. He could tell something went down, but we didn't talk about it.
Wow.
So yeah, I definitely have some good graffiti stories for sure. But
okay, well, I mean, what should, that doesn't really have a happy ending. It doesn't need to be a happy ending. What story should we go with tomorrow? What else you got?
We could talk about me going to jail in college. This was my only.
He's a ex-con.
Yeah, I've never been a big drinker, but when I was going to school in Santa Barbara, that's the culture there, and I had started drinking Sailor Jerry's alcohol, rum, and I was really into this artist called Danny Brown. He's a rapper, and he has like really like kind of fuck the system mentality songs. And I was listening to him a lot at the time, and I kind of credit him for this arrest. But I was drinking Sailor's Jerry and went out with a spray paint can and was tagging on stuff. And then a cop caught me in the act, and I like started running home in the direction of my home. And he caught up to me and like pulled me by my like belt loop. I was climbing over a fence and put me to the ground. And in my like drunken stupor, I like started scraping my face against the cement to try and make it seem like
you had hurt you.
He had hurt me.
That's hilarious.
And that backfired, because then they added a charge that I had committed battery against a peace officer, just to kind of get ahead of that, because it looked like they had beat me up. I think even he thought he might have done that to me, but I was just like scraping my face against the ground. And then luckily those charges got dropped because I wasn't pursuing charges against them. And then I got on probation, and then ended up getting arrested again for tagging. And then I went to jail for like 4 nights in Santa Barbara. So not a very happy ending.
What was your jail experience like?
Once they found out that I was an artist, I became useful, and I started doing a lot of art on the envelopes for people. And then they would give me cookies and stuff in return. So I actually, it wasn't prison, it was county jail, and they were all,
made a lot of friends.
A lot of drug addicts who were not bad people, and they were sober in there. So I did kind of make some friends. And my bunkmate was a guy who is probably still in jail to this day, because he was a meth addict who had stolen a cop car and then hit.
Wow.
I think he hit a woman with the cop car in the pursuit. So he's probably still out there sometime. And he told me that if he saw me again in jail, super nice guy. He was my bunkmate, and we had gotten along. But he told me if he saw me again in jail, he'd sodomize me. So that was my awakening, and I didn't really do graffiti again after that. So
wow. Because I spent a weekend in jail in Little Rock, Arkansas when I was
nice.
19. And it really changed my life.
Yeah.
Because it was for an open container of beer.
Sure.
And it was so terrifying that weekend I spent in the city jail of Little Rock.
Yeah.
That when it comes to crime, I'm strictly a misdemeanor guy.
Yeah.
I would never commit a felony.
Yeah.
You know, just, nothing $20 or more.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. The night in jail for that. That's crazy.
A weekend.
Really?
Yeah. They put me in on a Friday night. It's a story. My best friend from high school, his family moved to Little Rock, Arkansas, our senior year of high school. So I started out on the southern circuits. And like if I had a gig in Memphis or whatever, I think I had a gig in Memphis and went down to visit him. And we had gone out with some girls, parked on the river, downtown Little Rock. I haven't been back there in years. I think that's probably where they built the Clinton Library.
Yeah.
Because it was the city on one side and a big field on the other side of the river. And there's where all these teenagers parked. So it was like 40, 50 teenagers parked, drinking beer, sitting on hoods and talking to girls.
Yeah, of course. Where else?
And then all these cops came from every direction on both sides.
And that's their big crime of the weekend for sure.
Yeah. And then my cop took me and my girl to one side of the car and I was yes, sir, no, sir. And then the other cop took my friend and his girl to the other side of the car. And then right as my cop was saying, I'll let you pour the beer out and then you're free to go. Right as those words left his mouth, I hear my friend on the other side of the car, well, fucking take us to jail then.
God damn it.
And then took us all to jail and they were all locals. They were let out within the hour and I was a flea risk.
Oh, God.
So I had to spend the weekend in jail, and they were correct. I would have fled like a motherfucker.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
That's so funny.
But yeah, the charges were dismissed.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's
That's a good
jail
story.
stories.
Well, I think that swapping jail stories would probably be really
Yeah.
good. However, I do like the story of your mom with the Uber.
Yeah. Well, I could tell that story on stage because I've been working on it.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
But I really like the element of you trying to scrape up your face on the pavement.
Yeah.
So you look like you were roughed
Insane. And then I just ended up having to go to work the next day, like covered in scabs on my face. Yeah. Pretty dumb. Well, I'm looking forward to the show, though.
It's going to be great.
Awesome.
Orion, I love you so much as a human being, as a comedian.
Thank you, buddy.
And
You're the best.
it's an honor
Oh, thank you, man.
to be your friend.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, man.
Love it.
I'm gonna just enjoy watching your career skyrocket.
Right back at you, man. Yeah. Smart
So-
camp.
Smart Camp. In closing, do you have any words of wisdom or advice for the people of the earth?
Words of wisdom or advice? Wow. I'm gonna, your family knows how to push your buttons because they put them there. But let's see, wisdom or advice?
If you're facing a police charge, don't scrape up your face. I don't know.
I think I was reading a quote in my buddy's house, F. Scott Fitzgerald. It's a much longer quote, but the essence of it, F. Scott Fitzgerald. But the essence of it is that there are really no rules to life, and it's never too late to pursue what you want to do and to be the person that you want to be. And it's never too late to change directions either, because I've always been very passionate, obsessive person, as I think you are as well. And those obsessions have changed, and I'm so glad that I let them change. And I've never been tied down to one thing. Even with stand-up, it's what I truly love, and I think I'll do for the rest of my life. But it might come to a point where I want to just completely change and to give myself the freedom and ability to do that. And that's what I think life should be. So, yeah. How's that?
Adapting.
Yeah, exactly.
I love it.
Cool.
Orion Levine,
All right.
long may you run, my brother.
I love you, Tom. Thanks so much.
Love you
man.
too, brother.
This is the best.
Thank you. Hooray for humanity.
Yeah.